guys, we're going to learn about heat today. So let's start off right away. I'm going to give you guys a little introduction about heat, and it's going to kind of give us an idea of what we're talking about. We usually wear woolen clothes during the winters when it's cold outside because woolen clothes keep us warm. Like, for example, sweaters and cashmeres and just thick things that keep us warm when it's super cold outside. On the other hand, we prefer to wear light-colored cotton clothes when it's hot because these give us the feeling of coolness. There's 3 topics that we're going to discuss in this subject of heat. The first is going to be hot and cold, the second being measuring temperature, and the third and the last being laboratory thermometer, or just thermometers, you know, the one that you use to measure your fever when you have a fever. So let's go right away and start our first chapter, which is going to be hot and cold. We're going to go through and classify these 6 different things into either hot and cold. Ice cream. I'm going to give you guys like a little bit of time to decide what you think, and then I'll tell you guys. Is ice cream hot or cold? Is fire hot or cold? Fruit juice, hot or cold? The handle of a frying pan, hot or cold? The spoon in a teacup, hot or cold? And lastly, snow. So look at these 6 things and then think about what you guys think they're going to fall under, either hot or cold. And then we're going to quickly discuss it in the next slide. Alrighty. So the cold or the cool objects of the ones we decided were ice cream, fruit juice, and snow. And the warm or hot objects that we discussed in the previous slide were the spoon in a teacup, the handle of a frying pan, and, well, fire. So how do we decide which object is hotter than the other? We often do this when we touch the objects because our sense of touch is usually reliable, right? But actually, let's test that. Let's find out if our sense of touch is reliable in deciding if one object is hotter than the other. We're going to do a little activity to figure that out. So step 1, take 3 small tubs or containers, anything circular or cylindrical, anything that you have. Label them as A, B, and C. So then put cold water in mug A and hot water in mug B. Then mix some of that cold water in mug A and that hot water in mug B and put it in mug C. Now dip your left hand in mug A and your right hand in mug B. After you do that, after keeping the hands in the 2 mugs for about 2 to 3 minutes, put both of your hands simultaneously or at the same time in mug C. The left hand feels that water in mug C is hot, and the right hand that's feeling the same water in mug C thinks that the water is cold. So this concludes that our sense of touch is actually not that reliable. It's actually pretty unreliable. So what do we do? A reliable measure of hotness of an object is in its temperature. Temperature is measured using a thermometer. I feel like at some point in our lives, we've all seen a thermometer, right? When you get sick or get a fever, your mom always brings you a thermometer to check your temperature. So this lets us move on to our second chapter of the unit of heat. We're going to look at measuring temperature. I'm going to give you guys 3 facts about the thermometer. Alrighty? The first fact being the thermometer that measures our body temperature is called a clinical thermometer. So remember the thermometer that I talked about when you get sick or have a fever and you have to measure your body temperature? That's a clinical thermometer. India has adopted the Celsius scale. The other scale with the range 94 to 108 degrees is a Fahrenheit scale. The Celsius scale uses the C when talking about temperature, and the Fahrenheit scale uses the F. But we're mostly just going to talk about Celsius because, well, we live in India and that's what we use as a country. A clinical thermometer reads temperature from 35 degrees Celsius to 42 degrees Celsius. We're going to go ahead and look at a couple observations about the thermometer. A clinical thermometer consists of long, narrow, uniform glass tube. You can see that's what it kind of looks like in the picture in here, right? It has a bulb at one end, and this bulb contains mercury. Mercury is a chemical element that is used to measure thermometers. Although mercury, when mishandled, can be harmful to the human body and to the environment, so thermometers are changing what they put in there in a lot of countries to keep the environment and each other, you and I, safe. Outside the bulb, a small shining thread of mercury can be seen. You guys can see that in the little, it's right behind the yellow line that you see in the picture. If you do not see the mercury thread, rotate the thermometer a bit till you see it. You will also find a scale on the thermometer. The scale, you're looking at the scale when you're looking at the numbers, right? And it reads 35 to 42 degrees Celsius on the top half of the thermometer and 94 to 108 degrees Fahrenheit on the bottom half of the thermometer. The scale we use is the Celsius scale, which is on the top. It's the C. We're going to look at that. Precautions to be observed while using a clinical thermometer. It's important to know how to be safe while using clinical equipment, and a thermometer is considered one. So we're going to go through and look at stuff that we can do in order to be safe. A thermometer should be washed before and after use, preferably with an antiseptic solution. An antiseptic solution is something that's going to prevent the growth of disease-causing microorganisms. So basically, the reason you want to use an antiseptic solution to wash a thermometer before and after use is to keep it clean and pure so that no diseases can be contracted from there or gotten from there. Ensure that before the use, the mercury level is below 35 degrees. So before you use your thermometer, make sure that the little red liquid in the mercury string doesn't go above the 35 degrees Celsius line. Thirdly, read the thermometer keeping the level of mercury along the line of sight. So when you're reading your temperature, make sure that you can see the little silver line and the red line on top of that. to know that you are getting your accurate or correct results. And then handle the thermometer with care. If it hits against some hard object, it can break. Thermometers are usually made of glass, so if it falls or hits anything strong or hard, it's going to break, which one is going to cause a mess, and two is harmful because of the mercury in it, and mercury can be harmful to the human body and the environment, as we discussed earlier. Then, and lastly, don't hold the thermometer by the bulb while reading it. You're going to hold it in the middle of the thermometer with your one finger on top of the thermometer and your other finger on the bottom of the thermometer. So your index and thumb, holding it like you're holding a little eraser or something or reading it. Time for activity number 2. So step 1. First, note the temperature difference indicated between the two bigger marks. Also note down the number of divisions, which are usually shown by these little small tick marks between these marks. And this is on a thermometer. Suppose the bigger marks read 1 degree and there are 5 divisions between them, then one small division, or the difference between those little tick marks, is going to read 0.2 degrees Celsius. Wash the thermometer, preferably with an antiseptic solution as we discussed earlier, so something that is going to keep diseases away from being contracted. Once you've washed your thermometer with an antiseptic solution, hold it firmly and give it a few jerks. So wave your hand just a little bit, but slowly, not too hard that you hit anything. The jerks will give the level of mercury down or bring it down a little bit. So make sure that it's below 35 degrees Celsius. So the little red liquid in there is at 35. Now, place the bulb of the thermometer under your tongue. After 1 minute, so make sure you're counting or keeping a little phone or some kind of device next to you that can measure the amount of time. And after 1 minute, take the thermometer out and note the reading. This is your body temperature. The temperature should always be stated with its unit degrees Celsius. So a little dot on top and then a C. And you just read your own body temperature if you did that activity. The normal temperature of a human body is usually 37 degrees Celsius. Note that the temperature is stated with its unit, degree Celsius. So a little dot on the top and a C. It's important to do that because we need to know that it's in Celsius. Time to be a scientist now, so let's get to work, guys. Survey the temperature of 10 classmates and then note down those temperatures. I know this is a little hard to do this experiment right now with COVID and everything, so maybe they can all give you your temperatures by taking them themselves and then you can note them down, or just some other way of doing this. The clinical thermometer is designed to measure the temperature of human body only. The temperature of human body normally does not go below 35 degrees or above 42 degrees Celsius. So not below 35 degrees Celsius or above 42 degrees Celsius. That is the reason that this thermometer has the range between 35 degrees Celsius to 42 degrees Celsius. Time for the last chapter of this unit, laboratory thermometer. The range of a laboratory thermometer is generally from 10 degrees Celsius to 110 degrees Celsius. That is much larger than our clinical thermometer that we learned about in our last unit. So we're going to do a little activity, and I'm going to go through the steps of the activity. There's going to be 6 steps, so let's get started. The first step is going to be go to your kitchen or your bathroom or anywhere that you can get tap water from, and take some of that tap water and put it in a beaker or a mug. I would put it in a mug just because it's easier to find, but if you guys have a beaker just handy dandy, then that's perfect. Secondly, dip the thermometer in the water so that the bulb is immersed in the water. So the little bulb end of it, you're going to take that and you're going to dip it in the mug or the beaker that you just put the tap water in. Then you're going to hold the thermometer vertically. Make sure it's vertical and observe the movement of mercury in the thermometer. You're going to see there's going to be either an up or a down of the little red liquid in the silver string in the middle of the thermometer. Wait till the mercury thread becomes steady, so make sure that it's not moving anymore, the little red liquid. So it's just stagnant or still. Now, note the reading. This is the temperature of the water at that time. And you know how to read the thermometer because we went through that in the last unit, right? And then 6, compare the temperature of water recorded by each student in the class. So now that you have your water temperature, talk about what you got and compare it to what your friends in your class got. Moving on to the next activity. This is also going to be a 6-step activity, so I'm going to go through all the 6 steps. It's going to be a fun one. Take some tap water in a beaker or a mug. Like we discussed, it might be easier to get a mug, and if you're at a school, it might be easier to get a beaker depending on where you're at. Once you've taken the tap water into a beaker or a mug, dip the thermometer in that water. Then wait till the mercury thread becomes steady and note the temperature. Now take the thermometer out of the water and observe carefully what happens now. The level of the mercury is going to begin to fall, and the temperature must be read while the thermometer is in the water. Thus, it's not convenient to use the laboratory thermometer for this purpose, because you had to read the thermometer when it was still in the water, not when you had taken it out, which is what you're going to need to do in order to actually read it accurately. Why does the mercury not fall or rise in a clinical thermometer when it's taken out of the mouth, but it does when it's done in a laboratory one? Observe the laboratory and the clinical thermometers given on your left side of the screen. The clinical thermometer has a kink near the bulb, but in the laboratory one, it does not have a kink. So the clinical one is the one on the bottom, and the laboratory one is the one on the top. As you can see, there's a little kink in the bottom one, but there's no kink in the top one. So what is the use of the kink? The kink in the thermometer near the bulb prevents the mercury level from falling on its own. So that's why we use a clinical thermometer when we're taking our temperature instead of a laboratory one, because a clinical one has a little kink which is going to prevent the mercury levels from falling on its own, and it will give us the correct or accurate temperature of our body. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you had fun learning about heat and that you did those experiments and they were a fun experience. I'm looking forward to teaching more lessons, and I will see you guys then.